Without getting into my age, let me just tell you that I can pretty much tell an invoice that comes straight out of QuickBooks. I've seen QuickBooks for many versions and I know what it looks like. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's a strong, solid type of invoice or statement or whatever type of document we're actually looking for. But the point is, I still recognize it as QuickBooks. So what does that have to do with business? Well, in business, sometimes you have to have what I call pufferfish mentality, especially if you're a small business. And that is, you kind of need to puff yourself up to make you look a little bit bigger than you are. One of the ways you can do that is to customize what your customers see. Put your logo on an invoice or change the layout. In this chapter, we'll talk about how to customize forms so you can have that pufferfish mentality and in any event have a professional looking document for all of your customers to see.
Each form that you fill out, including estimates, invoices, sales receipts, credit memos, and more, are based on templates. QuickBooks comes with several templates preloaded. All you need to do is choose the one that you want to use. More often than not, you'll probably choose one from within a form that you're currently using, instead of from the list. So let's take a look at that first. I'm simply going to click Create Invoices to bring up a blank invoice form. And if you haven't paid too much attention to this, let's actually look at the fields that are included. Obviously, it has a bill to where it puts in who the customer is. On the right-hand side, it has the date, invoice number, ship to information. And then above our details, it offers a PO number, terms, the rep who sold it, a shipping date, how it's being shipped, and an FOB. So you may not have thought too much about it before, but this just happens to be one version of the form. If we look at the upper right corner of the form itself, you'll see that it says Template. There's a Print Preview button, and then it says Intuit Product Invoice. So this is just the default product invoice that comes with the product. But this is also a drop-down, so let's click on the drop-down, and let's choose Service Invoice instead. Now before I do this, take one last look. PO number, terms, reps. It also has quantity, item code, description, price each, amount, and tax. Now, with one click, I will choose the service invoice, and you see that it looks very different, in many ways simplified. We still know who we're billing it to, the date, the invoice number, but we don't have nearly the information that we had running across the top or the fields themselves within the details of the invoice. It's not that one is right or wrong, it's just personal preference and how some fields are more appropriate than other fields. What we want to do is to be able to customize not only the form that we use, but also the form itself. So let's remember first that we're working with the product invoice. Now we're looking at the service invoice. And I'm going to go ahead and close this invoice down. Get back to my main screen, and I'm going to open up my Lists menu and come almost all the way to the bottom and choose Templates. This is actually a list of all of the templates that are currently available in my version of QuickBooks. And you'll see that there's actually a lot of them. We have packing slips, several different kinds of invoices, sales receipts, orders, statements, all kinds of things that we may or may not have ever used yet. What I want to do though is to customize. So let me go ahead and choose our product invoice. Now that's the first version that we looked at. Then I'm going to come all the way down to the bottom, click the Templates button, and then I'm going to choose Edit Template. Now you don't have to worry, you don't have to be a programmer or even a designer in order to edit existing templates. This just brings up a dialog box that gives me some options. So let's take a look at what we have. First of all, we could use a logo. If my company has a logo, I could click on this checkbox, click the Select Logo button, navigate to where it is on my hard drive or my network, and insert it. That's always a good idea. But a more simple thing is just changing the color scheme. Currently, everything is just in plain old black and white. And if I have the option to either email or to use a color printer, that's a way of kind of jazzing up all of these things without it costing too much money or without having too much fluff, if you will, inside of my invoices and things. So let's say that my color scheme for my company actually uses maroon. Well, there happens to be a maroon color scheme, and I can choose that. I need to apply it. There we go. And over on the right-hand side in the preview, we can see that now a lot of the lines or boxes that were black are maroon. Great, that's a good start. Well, what else do I need to do? Well, as I look at the preview on the right, maybe one thing I don't like is the fact that the invoice, which is on the top right-hand side, is just a little bit plain. I want to change it. There are all of the different fonts for the different components, and title is one that I can select. I'll select that one, click the Change Font button, and we'll just make this one a little bit different. Instead of plain old Arial, maybe I will change it. Maybe my company is a little bit more casual about things. And I want to choose a more casual looking font, so maybe I'll choose Comic Sans. I also want it to be italics as well as bold. And maybe I want the color of that to be a green. Maybe maroon and green are our company colors. I think you're starting to get the idea here. It's just a matter of clicking on options. I'll say OK. And we can see that that's updated as well. It does take a little bit of time to go through each of the components and make sure everything matches. And I have to tell you, I'm kind of big on the fact that you should make sure that everything is updated if you're going to update one or two. Otherwise, it looks like you updated it. And we want this design to be consistent above all else. All right, moving down in our dialog box, we can add some information. Right now, the company name is there and the company address, but not things like the phone number or the email address. If I want to add that, I can simply click on the checkbox. Maybe I'll give them my website as well. But when I try to click on that, I notice that there's actually a little box that popped up above, and it says, use the layout designer to reposition overlapping fields. Okay, well, I'll kind of summarize this for you. When I turn certain things on, additional information, for example, it may kind of sit on top of other information that was already there because this template didn't use all of that information before. This is just telling me about the layout designer. I'm going to show you that in the next lesson. So I'm going to say, don't show me that again. Thank you for sharing, and OK. Now I can go ahead and click on my website address. Down at the bottom, it allows us to print a status stamp. For example, if I printed an invoice and somebody had already paid for the invoice, it would print paid across the top. These things are all pretty basic and pretty easy, but there's actually even more. The very bottom, there's a button that says Additional Customization. When I click that, it says that this template is designed for use with Intuit's pre-printed forms, so you can only make limited changes to it. If you want to make other changes for your own business needs, make a copy of the template. Do you want to make a copy now? And I'm going to say, yes, I do, because I'm planning on actually printing all of mine on plain paper, not on pre-printed ones. So I'll say, make a copy. It does just that. It keeps everything I already changed, and it gives me additional customizations. This again can be a little bit overwhelming, but it's also fun. We can choose a header, columns, progressive columns, a footer, and printing options. So from the header, I can choose what things I want to see, and if I want to see them on screen, when they print, and what title I actually want to have. So we can see that the default title of Invoice shows on screen and it prints. The date also does both things. Actually, as we move down, most of these things do, including the terms, but what I don't see is I don't see the due date in either place. I don't want to see the due date when I'm working with it, but I would like to show it in the printed copy, so I simply add a check mark. This again is telling me that I need to move things around, and I'm just going to click Continue for now. And I could also change what it actually says. So instead of due date, I could say pay by. Something like that. Now I don't always change the labels. I'm just trying to show you that these are options. So you can go down through all of these different fields and choose which ones you want to see. I'm going to go ahead and scroll down a little bit because there are some things at the very bottom. Let me scroll the list up. I wanted to point out that there are two fields here that we're seeing because I created them as custom fields. I said that I wanted to know what the operating system was and the software was that my particular customer was using, and it's now part of the customer record. When I customize forms, I need to add those in because obviously they didn't exist when Intuit created their versions. So I might say that I do want to see those on screen and print. Personally, I think this gets to be a little annoying, but that's why we're going to use the layout designer in just a moment. So I'm now showing the operating system for my client. Would I normally do that on an invoice? Probably not, but I do need to show you how you can use custom fields. After you've worked with the header information, then you go to the actual columns of information themselves, and there's fewer here. Date of service, item, description, quantity, rate, amount, and then you have other 1 and 2 that you can put in there. And again, they're for screen, print, as well as the title, but you also can choose the order. So I'm going to say that I want to put in the service date because when I provide classes, that would be a good thing to see. And I want them to go into a certain order. So right now when I look at quantity, that's the first thing. The item is the second thing, and the service date is the fifth thing. I'm going to change that a little bit. I want the item to come first. Then I want to see the quantity that I'm going to order. Quantity changes to 2. Then we'll see the description of the item, which is great. And then we will do the service date. And lastly, we would do the rate itself. So this is going to reorder them. I also don't like the word serviced. That's not what we do in training. So we need to come up with a different term for that that's going to make sense, but it also kind of short and sweet so it'll fit on the invoice. Maybe I'll abbreviate it train date. Now I'm not going to go through every one of these, but we have a separate tab for progressive invoicing. I told you that little box gets annoying. Go to progressive invoicing. We also can do things in the footer. One thing that I like to do with the footer is I actually like to use this long text thing. I'm going to put in that needs to print. And this is where I could put in my cancellation policy. I'll just type something fairly short. Cancellations must be received 48 or more hours before the class start date for a refund. That way this is going to go out on every invoice. I don't have to remember to tell them, neither do my salespeople. It'll be part of the paperwork. So if somebody says, I didn't know, we can say, refer to your invoice. It's that simple. The last thing that you can work with, of course, is printing. So there are a lot of options right here that I didn't have to be a designer or have to know anything about programming to do. They're simply a matter of making choices from the dialog box. You should take a little bit of time to think through what it is that you want to customize, maybe even print out some copies and kind of rough them up with a pencil or a pen to say, this is what I want. Do you want to change any of the verbiage, those types of things? Those changes are very simple to make and really give you a quick way to customize all of the forms that you use.